Hello, it's Sheila Kamara Hay of Ecstatic Birth, and today we're going to be talking about forging your own path. I am so excited for you to meet this amazing woman that I have here with me today. Her name is Nina Joy, and she's the author of a birthing book, the author of many meditation books. And what is amazing about Nina Joy? I mean, she has such a background. She worked like in the Navy, in the hospital division. She did all this work in Chinese medicine and holistic health. I'll let her fill you in on all of it. She has this beautiful, wide, varied background. But what's truly amazing about her is she is a visionary spirit, and she has been really forging her own path, both in her births and in the way she lives her life. So she birthed in ways that are very aligned with these ecstatic birth principles that I teach 20 plus years ago, when you couldn't even find this information, not on the internet, not in any books. Like, this was something she tapped into from her own innate wisdom. And this is something that I think is really, really important today because, as we're in the midst of this pandemic and we're kind of looking around us 9 months in, it's really, really obvious that there's no right answer, that people in charge, the powers that be, don't know what to do. And I think this is a huge opportunity. Like, one of the big principles of ecstatic birth is there's no right way to birth. There's only the right way for you. And the way in is through your deep, deep body connection. So I think we're all globally in this birthing field right now and being given a huge opportunity to tap into what's right for us and to forge our own path. So in that spirit, welcome, Nina. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm honored to be with you
Oh my
because I've
gosh.
enjoyed so much reading your emails and the teachings and the sharings that you've had. And they align so much with the way we approached birth, Bracken and I, in 1990, actually 89. The journey started in 89 when we discovered we were pregnant, and he was with me the entire time, supporting and saying whatever you need, whatever you don't. So I actually had the most awesome, ecstatic, maybe even orgasmic pregnancy, even before birth. So the pregnancy took us to Hawaii and almost to Russia. Actually, I was invited by Igor Tchaikovsky, who was the uh, one of the pioneers of water birth. And we chose water birth for our three daughters' births in three separate locations, and had journeys like you would believe. So
Wow.
it's interesting going back and looking at the book again, the details,
Yeah.
of that. And you had asked me, how how did I know what to do? And there was a resource at that time called Water Babies. Carol Daniels
Mhm.
wrote and compiled all kinds of resources. And there was something like 100, maybe not quite 100 midwives to choose from all over the world. She did her work, and she did a movie or a documentary film showing that way before its time. I feel like I'm way before my time, but
Yeah.
still in this forging. I'm still forging in my life now as you are, with the same principles. I think I use the same principles or the same, say, routine with even birthing the book or birthing the meditation line that you had said. And where probably the most important thing to focus on for me is when you're not breathing and your throat is closed and you're panicking, your cervix closes as well.
Mhm.
That goes hand in hand for some reason. And so big deep breaths and
Mhm.
just full breaths, which I learned in yoga, teaching yoga, without that, knowing that when you breathe in, you're breathing in life.
Yeah.
Without breath, there's no life. So probably that would be the most thing that I focus on, even during, as you say, we birthed our babies. But now we're in life, and we've had the babies. My babies are 30, 28, and 27. Yeah, maybe.
Wow.
Um, and it's hard to keep track, from way back then,
I have so many questions I want to ask you. I'm like sitting
Okay.
here going, which one do I ask her first? Because there's so many. I think the thing that I'm most intrigued about, knowing your background and you mentioning that you were in the Navy for a period of time. Like when I think about the military, when I think about the Navy, that's a very much like you follow the rules, like this is the way to do things, this is the right way to do it.
Yeah.
How in the world did you transition from that type of environment into the sort of life that you're living now, where you came out and you decided, hey, like I'm going to have water births with my babies and build domes and like monoliths. Like how, tell me about that. Like how did you come out of this really like regimented, in some ways like a reflection of our society where we're taught like do as you're told, like do your homework, that we're all kind of trained, however well-meaning our parents are and however well-meaning we are as parents, to a certain extent we're all kind of trained to like follow instructions, and the instructions come from somewhere outside of ourselves, right? And so
Mhm.
how did you start to flip that? Because I think that's the piece that is the most fundamental piece for women. Even when I
Mhm.
hear you talking about like the throat and the cervix, the first thing that comes to mind is so many of the clients that I work with have that constriction in their throat because as women generally, like our voices have been silenced. We've been taught it's
Yes.
not safe to speak. So there's so much to unpack here and everything that you can share with your wisdom. But that's the piece I'm really curious about. It's like, how did you come out from under that conditioning of like following rules and orders and start to really forge your own path?
I think it happened when I ended up on the same hospital ward I was working on with a broken back. I
Mm,
literally was in a car wreck when I was in the Navy, and I was a patient suddenly. I
mm,
was in a body cast for 2.5 months. I
mm.
had a year in the hospital off and on, and surgery too, to think, to see, to observe all the pain around me. And the pain that I was experiencing was physical pain and emotional pain, to not be able to go to work and all those things that you think you have to do, and regimented as I was. I guess it was time actually being in pain,
Mm.
seeing everywhere, made me think, well, how, there's so many people that are sick. How can I help those people not get sick,
Yeah.
not end up in the hospital unless it's an emergency or something like that. But that, people are getting sick and dying. And I had kind of an epiphany. I don't want to be a nurse anymore. I want to help people not get sick. So I went into preventive. That's when I started studying Chinese medicine. And with the all the things that gravitated to me by the law of attraction, that I started getting all kinds of information about, we're not just the body,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
are gems that are in the bottom of the ocean, that have gems that you can't see them. It looks like a rock. And so it's a polishing. It's really not overnight that
Mm,
you're going to get it, but
mhm.
in time, when you have that desire, I guess, I think desire is probably the most driving force, or it's where the dreams live, in
Yeah.
your desire, so actually it was a process, not really just what
Yeah.
did I do, but all of that led me to how important it was to take the time
Yeah.
to practice, because you're not going to be good at anything just right away, are you?
Yeah.
Maybe you're a natural pianist or something like that, but it did take time. It
Mm,
took time, and with that injury that I sustained, propelled me. Now, I don't want everybody to have an injury to help propel them into what, but it is sort of like the outer does matter, enough to then go
Mhm.
inside, which is where everything is.
Yeah.
Goddess is inside
Yes.
of us, so getting in touch of that
Yeah, and
is
so what
important.
I sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I just
No.
got really excited because what I heard you say is that this injury puts you in a state of being, like you couldn't really actually do anything. And that
No.
beingness like really pressed you to connect with yourself and your truth, like you had this time to really feel like what was truly important to you and how you wanted to show up. And it's interesting because we talk a lot about, I know we have this in common, the contractions and the expansions, right? And in birth, you have these contractions and they exist for your expansion. They exist for you to open so you can birth your baby. And I feel like that really mirrors in life as well. I look at all those like contractive moments where I might be fearful or scared or protective or hurt, um, as doorways to the expansion. So there's like this gift that comes with every contraction. And that's what I'm hearing in your story of like you had this injury and that was like a big contractive moment for you in your life. But then on the other side of it, there was this expansion where you were so much more in touch with your being and your essence and what was important to you and how you wanted to show up. It's so
That's
cool.
exactly it. I mean, and it was a turning point for me because I had planned to be a doctor, an MD, and I knew at one point, no, I did not want to do that, and the reason why, not to knock doctors, but they learn allopathic ways and they are regimented and they do it that way, where I wanted the freedom to birth the way I wanted to. I know my body more than anybody else. So
Yeah.
why would a doctor come in and say, you need to do it this way? I was kind of a rebel too when
I
I
can
was a
see
kid.
that.
And so I rebelled against, that back and forth of conforming to society's. Well, I never really got into that. I felt like I was a fish out of water. I've swam with dolphins pregnant, naked. I mean, they love um, us. The dolphins, the whales love us enough to help teach us. And they've been my teachers too, in the water. I've spent many, many times swimming by myself with dolphins. They just show up. But that took time too, to the fear that we have about pain is a lot of why I think we close down
Yeah.
and contract.
Yeah.
But when you move into the pain, so to speak, or that energy, that emotion, that energy in motion, you can feel all of it rather than, I don't want to feel the pain. But
Yeah.
when you move in, as you well know and have talked about, you almost have to, to, and women that have had labor and birth know what I'm talking about. It's just the ring of fire, you are there, and what are you going to do? Just be in it, and
Yes.
it was something, the births and then life, the ring of fire of life right now, what we're all going through now,
Yeah.
with the having to be in and contracted. But I think it's birthing expansion,
Yeah.
easy. Both words are just so they're so together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I definitely see that. I definitely feel like we are, if not in the ring of fire right now, then definitely approaching that. Because, back in March, I was like, okay, so I just get to stay home for a bit and I get to, there's been like these waves going
uh,
through. But I'm also like, I'm so curious about your physical births. Like I can go on all day about like these metaphors between how we birth and how we live our life. But I know that for you, having had the births that you had 20 years ago was a pretty revolutionary thing. And
mhm.
you've shared with me that your pregnancies were ecstatic and your births felt orgasmic. And so I just, if you can give us a peek into some of that yumminess.
Okay. Um, when I first learned I was pregnant with Now, our first, I, it was like, whoa. But then immediately joy, because it wasn't planned. You know, a lot of things aren't planned, but you make them into what they are. Moving into Now Joy's birth, I was never done it before, you know, and then the second and then the third were different. But the first one was, I wanted to have my birth not in a confinement, not with beeping machines around. I wanted it to be, I had already, I had sent off for the Carol Daniels documentary, and she shows 3 live births. And I knew kind of what it was going to be like after seeing that, birthing in the water. Wow. You know, all of that. Didn't ever think about it before. You know, the year before that, I was in Russia and never thought a thing about birthing. But I met Igor Chukovsky, who was the pioneering, one of the pioneering uh, birthing experts and in water, because his daughter was 2 pounds and he put her in water. Long story short, she thrived.
Right.
And so when I heard that word thrive in water, I was just drawn to water. I had to be in the bathtub, you know, all that, and communing with the baby, just doing all the things that were in a book that I might have seen, but doing it my way.
Yeah.
You know, I got the usual pregnancy books and things like that to learn about all of that, but I wanted to do it my way.
Yeah.
And that wasn't normal back then. You know, your home births were kind of the thing of the past. They were the past, and that's all they did. And they did a lot of water births back in the ancient times, but nobody really talked about it. And then fast forward, okay, we're going to do this, you know. So the choice of water birth kind of drove me to having a water. Now, my births, the first one was 30 hours. I was in labor for 2, you know, a couple days. It felt like, but it was really mild. And then we were outside walking, you know, on Maui. We were on Maui. And if you want to read my book, if anybody out there is looking and they want to read the book, they'll get the full details. But the birth itself was, I can't even put a word to it. Maybe joy, you know, joyous experience for the first one. The second one was actually, we finally settled down. Bracken and I were in our motorhome, all with Now Joy, and we were traveling a lot in our motorhome, and we saw on our way these domes in Texas. I know this is kind of off subject, but we eventually had a birth in a monolithic dome that we had built, that was on its way to being built, and it was countdown to dome births. That's one of the stories that I wrote. But as far as the Ring of Fire and Now coming out, and each birth had that, it was the most empowering rite of passage I've ever been privileged to experience, being a woman, being a goddess on this planet, living the life of that I want to live. And it's not for everyone. I'd say that some hospital births are awesome, but it just wasn't for me. You know, it wasn't for me, and I didn't go that direction at all. I didn't even see a doctor until I saw my midwife. I don't know where I got that strength, other than God Goddess that's with us all the time. But it was magical. I would say that it was magical more than anything else.
I wanted to ask you about how, you know, strength is one way to look at it for sure. And there is an element of like connection to something greater than us. And I could feel, actually, I was watching your body as you were telling the story, and talked about like water, how your body was like, yeah, like you could see that there's this like this, your body was leading you to a certain extent to what you
Hmm.
wanted. I'm curious about fear because, like, as you mentioned earlier, fear is the thing that really causes the pain, that causes the suffering.
Hmm.
Um, and in your journey to creating these births that were quite radical, quite revolutionary in the time that you were doing it, how did you like how did you dance with fear? I mean, we all have fear, right? Especially the first time you're giving birth. Very common. You don't know what that's really going to be like. And
Hmm.
so, how did you lead with that joy and that desire coming from your body and not have the fear overtake you? Or how did you disarm that fear?
I think I was told during my years of meditation, deep meditation practice, you love the fear. You
Mm,
have to love it because from love, all things are birthed.
mm,
And so that wasn't just overnight either. I had to kind of move into that and practice loving what I was fearing. Well, what makes it so fearful if you're loving it?
mhm.
It's kind of weird, to say that, but I think that's the answer. I learned to, when the fear came upon me, I would say, okay, fear, are you trying to teach me something? Why are you there? Because I had nightmares as a child. I was really, when I said I was a rebel, I was certainly was, but I had fear all the time when I was little. So somehow I'm not sure why it changed so much, because nobody ever told me to love the fear,
Yeah.
just be fearful of the fear, but then you hear that
Yeah.
fear is what you fear. So kind of analyzing it back into, well, what is it really? What is fear?
Mhm.
It's the absence of knowing, of being sure, of believing enough.
Yeah.
But a thought, I was told once, a thought is just a belief is just a thought you keep thinking until it becomes a belief. And so the fear, the way that I did it is, when it came, I said, I love you, just practically, just saying whatever's coming up, I love you, you know and it does have some power. Love has the power to heal just about anything.
Yeah, I've definitely heard the idea that, like, well, what's leading you, right? Is it the fear that's leading you, or is
Hmm.
it the love that's leading you? And this distinction that fear is something that happens in the mind. It's a headspace, right? It's not usually in the moment, like it's a projection.
Hmm.
And if you can, and I think this is definitely an oversimplification because we are very complex beings, but generally, if you can drop into your body and be with the sensations. And when I hear you
Hmm.
say like loving the fear, that's how I interpret it, is like that I can allow the fear, I can feel the fear and also love the fear so that it can flow. It can flow through me because it's really the stuckness, the freezing, the clamping down around fear that
Yes.
prevents us from being able to move through and get to that place where like our love or our desire is really
Hmm.
guiding us, right?
Right.
Um,
Right.
so interesting. And I'm curious about also like, so you had these amazing births really on your terms, you forged your path. It sounds like it has always been a big part of your life.
Hmm.
Yoga, you've mentioned the breath. I'm curious, when you talk about practicing, like, what
Hmm.
does that look like for you? What is it when you talk about practicing to show up, to, be connected to your inner compass? What is that for you?
Practicing, say, yoga, on a daily basis. When you want to learn something, you usually have to practice.
Yeah.
um, I practiced guarding my thoughts, with each of the births, because it's not that the thoughts don't come, and
Yeah.
then with a thought you're going to get an emotion, or most all the time either it's going to be good or it's going to be less than good, that you would think when you think a thought. So practicing guarding those thoughts that are pure, that are really real and not just a false premise, is so important. And I have a tips area in the back of the book where I picked out the most important ones that I worked on during all my pregnancies. And so I practiced practical things. Try not to, when you have a thought of fear or something coming your way, or some tragedy does happen during your life, it's not that I think what helps me is I know that there is joy within me always. I
Mhm.
might be emotionally scared or startled about something or thinking about something, but doesn't that joy never goes away when you realize that you are made of light. You're a light being. So how can you be dark? There's no presence of darkness in light. Do you turn on the dark switch? So it has to do with practicing. Literally, if you guard your thoughts, that's sort of like, ooh, guarding. No, you let a thought come. And in meditation, you're sitting there, the thought comes, and you go, okay, boom, it's gone. So it is a practical thing. I did practical things like breathing every day, focusing on good things rather than tragedy. You know, does that answer your
Totally. Oh,
question?
I'm sitting here thinking, oh my God, you were such a soul sister. Like, one of the when I first started teaching ecstatic birth, I consciously used the word training because I felt like it's not enough to just read a book or take a class, or like it's in the practice that you can really shift your relation to your body. It's in the practice. And a big piece of what I do, both with expectant moms and birth practitioners, is give them those practices, the breathing, the sounding, the moving, the meditation, to be able to access those places of like expanded love, joy, bliss, ecstasy in their body. And it's one of those things, like I say all the time, like you don't have to go on like a big retreat to Bali, although that's wonderful if you can do it. But it's in like the little practices every day, like small practices done consistently create monumental change. That's my phrase that I say all the time. Anyone that works with me knows that. And so, yeah, so hearing you talk about your practices just really like reaffirms that, man, you've really known what you're doing. And I just honor and bow down to you on your journey. And
Oh,
I'm curious, the other thing I love is like, I don't often get to speak to women who had like ecstatic or orgasmic experiences in birth, 20 years ago. It's more like, oh, last year, or like last month, or right. So it's not often that people really get to see like the ramifications of that. And it's my contention, and I know we've talked about this, that birth is a rite of passage, right? That there's a baby being born, but there's also a mother being born. And there's also like a woman, there's this new phase of like womanhood that is also coming forward with that. And in this rite of passage, when you do birth consciously in this way, there's so many gifts that you get for your womanhood, like your relationship to your inner feminine wisdom, your ability to create and manifest what you want in your life, because it's all an act of creation, right? Like, how does a baby get into your womb? Through desire, right? Going back to what you said earlier, that desire is the seed. And so I'm wondering if you were to reflect on like, what are some of the gifts that you reaped from your births that you feel like you still use, you still enjoy, as you're birthing other things in your life now, your book, your work, all of your soul's babies.
right. What were the gifts? Gosh, so many. Trust, I think, was a gift for me, because as I walked forward with no money, going to Hawaii for the first time, living on credit cards, and finally finding a midwife that was practicing there at the time. Trust came up so much.
Mm.
We had obstacles in our way, and we said, okay, well, there's something better,
Yeah.
and I think being able to trust your own body in birthing, or your mind or your spirit, trusting all of that to guide you the right way. It's hard to explain the
It's huge.
gift of unconditional love from my mate Bracken, and then during my pregnancy with Star, and then I am all three babies. Well, I had now when I had Star, so that was a gift. She
Mhm.
was in the water with me when I birthed Starjoy. The gift of family and support. But I think trust comes up for me more than any of that, because without it, you're just all over the place with
Yeah.
your body. If you don't trust your body and your mind to be connected to rightness, or what is right for you, not necessarily everybody. In the beginning of my book, I honor all women, whether they've had babies or not, but especially ones that have, because as you well know, as a mama, when you go through that rite of passage, or the joy of childbirth, it's a maturity now, instead of you don't know. So now you know what that's like. And so it's kind of just a moving forward and trusting. That is probably the best gift that I had, to trust that I could do it again and
Yeah.
again, because things change,
Yeah.
times change. And to be able to keep doing, even the meditation line that I did. It was a long time coming. The book, writing the book, and then raising a family. I don't have all the answers, but when I am low in my strength, say my wherewithal or whatever, you do have that foundation. So starting with a firm foundation would be the most important thing in any venture, whether it's birthing a baby, or birthing a goddess ecstatic meeting, meet up with babies.
Yeah, I can really feel how profound that is when you talk about trust, because you're talking about it on so many different levels. Like you're talking about like trusting your body, trusting your desire, trusting your knowing, trusting your resources are going to show up, trusting, like there's so many layers to that. And I can see how being able to like lean into that trust, it's
Mhm,
it's like allowing whatever is meant to flow, right? We talk about again
mhm,
in the contractions and expansions of birth that you want to really surrender and trust, even if you're moving in that surrender and trust, because you want things to flow through your body. You want that
mhm,
energy of the universe to support you in birthing your baby. And when you're not trusting and you're resisting or you're fighting, you're actually resisting all of that support, all of that energy flow that will bring you closer to your baby. And so I can see how having those layers of trust as you birth your book, as you birth your meditation line, as you journey, in your life could be a really, really powerful thing.
I'm a grandmama now.
Oh
So
my God.
2 years ago now had her first baby Joy. And
Oh,
so she's we're far in distance apart. She's in Washington, but and I'm in Arizona. we, because of technology now, we could have never done this back in the 90s. I remember dreaming of video chat, dreaming of video telephones, back in the day,
Yeah.
and stuff. And so I don't know how young you are, but I'm in my 60s now, and I still feel at times that I'm 20,
Yeah.
yet I'm not. I have to realize that I'm not, and being your authentic self. With Women tend to want somebody else to tell them sometimes what to do, because we are women. We were little girls, and our daddy told us what the best thing to do, and our mama and stuff. And yet, it's not all good. I came from a broken home. There were struggles as a kid and stuff. I think it just made me stronger,
Yeah.
in my resolve, to go through that 30 hours of labor and having a cervical lip. The first time I was pushing, I was all by myself in this water. I was tired. I was in the second birthing tub that we had set up for after the birth, but I just couldn't stand it. I was alone. I was in a home that we had rented the day I went into labor. It was a big mansion. It was just a magical situation, but I wasn't progressing. I was 6 centimeters after about 25 hours. And so of first to start, it was really easy. We walked around the property and things, but then as time went on, it was late, it was nighttime. I was all by myself, and I felt the urge to push.
Mhm.
Nobody was around me. Midwife, she went on. She was either resting or whatever. She went home, and I was by myself, and I had to push, and I pushed so hard 5 times. I remember looking back, and a voice, I heard stop in my mind, stop, as loud as that. And I did. I stopped, and I started to breathe again. I hadn't had really that much um, programming that was just, fear. You had to go to the hospital now, blah, 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 all these things that go into your mind. Maybe the birth's not going to happen. I didn't have those thoughts. I just stopped. I called Marilee, and when she examined me the next time, I had a cervical lip, which means the cervix is not, it's covering the opening. It can't stretch anymore. And if it does, you're going to hurt yourself. So she says, well, if this doesn't change, we're going to have to go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And, middle of the night, da, 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 da. And so I said, no, just no. My choice is to have this baby. I've gone through this long. We're going to do it. And she reached in me and manually pushed the cervical lip back up. And I had the baby within not too long after that. I was tired. I was really exhausted, but so I didn't have it all good. Don't get me wrong. There has been some pain and some struggle, with each one of them. But on the most part, I wouldn't let that dominate my thoughts. See, it is so important, and practicing those thoughts that are good and empowering and uplifting and assuring. Where do you get that? You get that from a knowing within you.
Yeah.
And until you do, you're always looking outside for satisfaction. You're never going to get it. You're going to get it from what's in you.
So beautiful. Thank you so much. Nina, will you share with everyone about your book and about your meditation series? And
Sure. I have a copy right here. I'll show you. I
Wow.
do. The book is actually a hard copy, and I have a digital one, but it's full of pictures, and let me show you a couple of, maybe this picture right here is really cool. I was in labor with Now Joy then, and we were together in Hawaii. All was looking really good, but by the end, you're all sweaty and, you know, and everything.
Yeah.
But my book, Fearless Birth and Beyond, you can get it. You can give a link if you want to on
The link
the
right under the
paper,
video.
the video. And I wrote the book to help others realize they can do it the way they would like. It's not for everybody, but the way that I did it was the way I chose to do it, and I had an amazing support system, you
Hmm.
know, around me. But when I still remember that time when I was completely alone, nobody with me, and I chose to push when I shouldn't have, and it created something that it created, but then it could be then fixed. So if we don't give up, you know, on our dreams and our desires, then just know that we can do things rather than can't. And so
So
as far as the book is concerned, I hope everybody, you know, does get to see it and read it sometime, even you, even though you've had births, because there's some great tips in the back, and I'd love to hear from anybody that would like to write to me.
hmm.
And I appreciate being on your interview show, and I just love you. I don't know why. There's a certain love that I have for you after reading for months and months and months now your emails and seeing you, you know, the different things that you're doing. You're amazing. You're kind of an extension of what I would love every woman and mate of
Yeah.
them to do, to practice and do it.
So much
So
love and respect back at you, Nina. I just really am so inspired by you and how you took this journey without, not that you didn't have resources and support, but really like I can feel in everything that you've shared this like deep connection to your body and your inner wisdom and that trust that you talked about. And I loved when you shared about, it's not like your journey's been all easy and smooth. I think that's like a common misconception that people have. It's like, oh, are you saying that birth is easy? Like, no, it's a rite of passage. There's going to be plenty of challenges. But
mhm.
the way you said, it's like just trusting, like when those contractions come, instead of falling into this pattern of like, I can't do this, or whatever those negative thought patterns are around your fear, but really leaning into all of your practices, all of your resources to bring you back to that place where you're connected to yourself and your desire and your vision and your love. Like it's just, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, Nina. It's such an
You're
inspiration.
Thank you. My honor to be here with you. And I hope to get to see you again.
Thank you so much. And for those of you that are interested in learning more about Nina and her work, I will definitely put the link to her book in the comments this video. And I will also share with you that beginning January 11th, I will be opening the Ecstatic Goddess Circle. Registration's open now, but that circle will begin in the new year. And that's really all about conscious creation. It's about using these gifts of birth, the wisdom of birth. So even if you're not having a baby, but you're really resonating with this conversation and really resonating with, how do you create from pleasure, from love, from desire? That's what the Ecstatic Goddess Circle is about. It's really about using the journey of birth to inform your birthing of your soul's babies. So I will put the info for that below this video as well. So thank you everyone for watching. Thank you again, Nina, for being here, and
Thank
lots of
you.
love.
Lots
Bye,
of love.
everyone.
Bless you.